A lot of people want to try and do pitfire pottery. I understand that. I have a great passion for it myself because it is a very great way to do truly unique pottery. But some people also have concerns about it. Maybe you think it's too smoky to do in your own backyard, or maybe you think pitfire pots turn out too fragile, or maybe you are afraid they won't hold water, or that they're not food safe, or maybe you have concerns about the environment, how it affects that, or your personal safety. I get it, and those concerns are valid, but they're not necessarily the truth, at least the whole truth. So in this video, I'm going to address some of the most common concerns that people have with pitfire pottery. This is based on my own experience working with pitfire pottery for many years. Are you worried your pitfire will smoke up your whole neighborhood? It doesn't have to be that way. There are two solutions, and the first one is easy. If you fire with quality wood, dry wood that you would also use in your fireplace inside, then it doesn't actually create that much smoke. And then you can fire in your backyard just like I'm doing here. The second solution is if you do want to fire with some smoke, because it can create really beautiful pots.
It's a bit smoky here. I should be wearing a mask.
Then I fire at night, because let's be realistic. At night, people are not out in their gardens and they don't sit on their balconies, so you don't disturb them with the smoke. I do that all the time here in my own garden in a residential area. A lot of people are concerned with the environmental impact and personal safety of doing pitfire pottery. And although you should of course take these matters serious, the fact is, if you protect yourself well, if you use gloves, glasses and a mask, then you're perfectly protected and you won't be harmed at all. When it comes to the environment, if you fire with pure wood, the CO2 emission is neutral because the amount of CO2 that is released when you fire wood is exactly the same as is contained when the wood is growing. On top of that, of course, you may also want to add some salt and oxides and things that can potentially release some toxic fumes. But I think you should look at the proportions, because what we do with pitfire is not even a fraction of a percentage of what is done in production industries. I mean, if you're like me, you're probably going to do a pitfire once a month or maybe twice a month, and that is so little. The fact is, everything we do have an impact on nature. Taking a ride in your car, taking a flight on vacation, it all have an impact on nature. So the question is not so much if it's toxic what we do, but how much we do it and how we protect ourselves not to be harmed. So in my mind, you don't really have to be that concerned with pitfire, not from an environmental point of view and not from a personal safety point of view. Maybe you love the way that pitfire pots look. They're so beautiful, but you hate that they can't hold water. Don't worry, I have a fix for that. It is true that as a default, when you take out a pitfire pot from the kiln, it is not entirely waterproof. That's the same thing with all low-fired pots, also ragu. Over the years, I have tried a lot of different sealants. You can buy sealants in pottery stores, but they typically don't seal the pot entirely. Some people also use sodium silicate. In the old days, people used to use milk, but although these methods does provide some sealant, they're not perfect. What I found is that very cheap concrete sealant that you can buy in most hardware stores actually do the job perfectly. You probably heard that pitfire pottery is not food safe, but that is not entirely true. Now, when it comes to food safety, you have to understand that it's not a global standard. So what is considered food safe in my country, Denmark, may not be the same in your country. But generally speaking, if you fire your pitfire with natural materials like wood and leaves, nuts and banana peels, then what comes out of it is not toxic to humans. Then comes the question of how you seal it so bacteria don't hide in these little pores. And there are materials that you can use that are approved for food, at least here in Europe, and that are totally food safe. And if you use that, then you can use it like some restaurants are even using it. It is perfectly food safe. But of course, you need to take all these things into account when designing your Pitfire pots. And in this course, I'll teach you all about that so you can end up with perfectly food-safe pots. Maybe you heard that Pitfire pottery is very fragile, so you have to take really care of it and you can't really use it in everyday use. That is not entirely true. It is true that Pitfire pottery, just like ragu-fired pottery that is not fired to a very high temperature, is not as strong as stoneware and porcelain. But it's not very fragile. Of course, if you drop it on the floor, it's probably going to break, but that is true for porcelain and stoneware as well. I usually don't put Pitfire pottery in the dishwasher. I don't do it with ragu, and I don't put it in the microwave oven. But other than that, you can treat it like any other pottery. The Pitfire pottery that I have and that I have sold to my clients have lasted for decades. It's not going to break just because you use it for everyday use. Pitfire pottery is not that fragile. Don't be afraid of that. If you want to learn more about Pitfire and get many more tips like this, please follow the link below to read more about my online Pitfire course. You'll get instant access to more than 45 video lessons that will teach you everything about Pitfire.